The sleep advantage. Alexara pressed herself against the ventilation shaft's cool metal walls, listening to the rhythmic hum of the human research station's life support systems. The steady pulse of atmospheric processors created a mechanical heartbeat that echoed through the facility's corridors like the breathing of some vast, technological organism. In 14 hours, this entire structure would be nothing more than debris floating in the void between stars, its secrets scattered to the cosmic winds like digital dust. The mission briefing had been refreshingly simple. Eliminate the research team studying quantum consciousness before their discoveries could threaten the hegemony's technological superiority. Her handlers had emphasized the urgency with the kind of clinical precision that marked all high-priority operations. Human research into consciousness patterns was progressing faster than intelligence projections had predicted, their primitive understanding somehow yielding results that challenged fundamental assumptions about awareness and cognition. Her species, the Vel'tar, had evolved past the primitive need for sleep 3 million years ago. While lesser races wasted precious hours in unconsciousness, the Vel'tar maintained constant vigilance, their neural pathways firing with relentless efficiency 24 hours every standard day. This evolutionary advantage had made them the galaxy's premier assassins, capable of sustained operations that would exhaust any other species into vulnerability. The advanced neural architecture of Vel'tar consciousness operated like a finely tuned quantum processor, never requiring downtime, never experiencing the biological glitches that plagued primitive nervous systems. Their awareness flowed in perfect continuity from birth to death, unmarked by the chaotic interruptions that characterized underdeveloped intelligence. Every thought processed with crystalline clarity, every decision calculated with mathematical precision. The humans below her moved through their evening routines with the casual inefficiency that marked all primitive civilizations. Dr. Patterson checked his research notes one final time, yawning as he secured his workstation with movements that seemed almost mechanical in their predictability. Dr. Chen stretched her arms above her head, clearly fighting the biological imperative that would soon render her completely defenseless against any threat. These creatures actually chose to spend 8 hours of every 24-hour cycle in total unconsciousness. Their neural activity would slow to a crawl, their bodies would become motionless, and their awareness would simply vanish as if they were temporary malfunctions in the universe's design. The concept violated every principle of survival that governed intelligent life throughout the galaxy. From an evolutionary perspective, sleep represented catastrophic vulnerability. 8 hours of complete helplessness every single day, during which predators could strike without resistance, environmental threats could develop unchecked, and critical opportunities could slip past unnoticed. The Vel'tar had eliminated this weakness eons ago, transforming their consciousness into an unbreakable stream of awareness that never faltered. Alexara's thermal sensors confirmed what her briefing materials had promised with mathematical precision. Within 2 hours, every human in the facility would be deep in their vulnerable sleep state, their consciousness completely offline. Their security systems would continue operating with automated efficiency, but the biological components would be utterly helpless. No guards would patrol the corridors with alert eyes scanning for threats. No researchers would monitor their equipment with conscious attention to anomalies. The entire station would become a tomb waiting for its occupants to join the dead. She shifted position in the ventilation shaft, her enhanced muscles moving silently despite the cramped quarters. Vel'tar physiology had been perfected through millions of years of evolutionary pressure, creating assassins whose bodies moved like liquid shadow through any environment. Through the grating below, she watched Dr. Patterson power down the main laboratory's quantum resonance chamber. the device's energy signature fading from brilliant white to dormant amber. The machine represented humanity's crude attempt to understand consciousness itself, a field where the Vel'tar had achieved mastery eons before humans had even discovered fire. Their research notes spoke of breakthrough discoveries in quantum entanglement patterns within neural tissue, suggesting that consciousness operated through mechanisms more complex than simple electrochemical signaling. The irony was delicious and profound. These primitive beings sought to unlock the secrets of awareness while surrendering their own consciousness for a third of their existence. They built sophisticated machines to study the nature of thought, while their own minds shut down every single day like malfunctioning equipment, requiring constant repair cycles. Patterson left the laboratory, switching off the lights as he departed. The facility's illumination dimmed to emergency levels, casting long shadows that would provide perfect concealment for Alexara's approach. Her thermal vision painted the corridor in shades of cooling metal and fading heat signatures, each surface telling a story of recent human activity through temperature variations invisible to primitive optical sensors. The cooling patterns revealed human inefficiency in stark detail. Unnecessary movement, wasted energy, systems running at less than optimal capacity. The Vel'tar had optimized their technology to operate with zero waste, every joule of power directed toward maximum effectiveness. Human engineering, by contrast, seemed designed by creatures who had never faced real evolutionary pressure. In 90 minutes, she would begin her work with the methodical precision that had made her legendary among hegemony's special operations. The humans would never wake up to see tomorrow's sunrise streaming through the station's observation ports. Their research into consciousness would end with their own awareness, creating a perfect symmetry that appealed to Alexara's sense of professional artistry. The Vel'tar had perfected the art of elimination during sleep cycles across hundreds of worlds. Their techniques refined through countless operations against dozens of species. Unconscious beings posed no threat, offered no resistance, and created no complications that couldn't be solved through superior technology and tactical awareness. A simple injection of neural toxin would ensure each human transitioned from sleep into permanent rest without ever experiencing a moment of fear or pain. Clean, efficient, and utterly reliable. The hegemony's methods always prioritized surgical precision over dramatic displays of force. Dead researchers generated less political complexity than missing facilities, and eliminated threats posed fewer long-term complications than contained ones. Alexara activated her internal chronometer and settled into the patient stillness that made her species legendary among the galaxy's intelligence networks. Other races required stimulants or meditation techniques to maintain alertness during long surveillance operations, their primitive neural architectures failing under extended operational stress. The Vel'tar simply existed in a state of constant readiness, their consciousness never dimming, never wavering, never requiring the biological reset that handicapped lesser evolutionary developments. 2 hours passed with mechanical precision, each minute marked by subtle changes in the facility's electromagnetic patterns. Her sensors confirmed the expected progression. Human brain activity had shifted into the slow, regular waves characteristic of deep sleep. Heart rates had decreased to minimal survival levels. Body temperatures had dropped by several degrees. Muscle tension had relaxed to the point where these creatures could barely move if somehow awakened by external stimuli. The station had become exactly what the mission parameters had predicted, a collection of unconscious targets awaiting professional attention from someone whose consciousness never faltered, never required maintenance, never abandoned its post for biological necessity. She sliced through the ventilation grating with molecular precision, her equipment creating an opening barely wide enough for her lithe frame. The descent to the corridor floor took less than 3 seconds, her enhanced reflexes calculating trajectory and landing points with mathematical accuracy. Her boots made no sound against the polished metal flooring as she moved toward the residential section where the humans had retreated to their individual chambers. The facility's architecture was typical of human engineering, functional but inefficient, prioritizing comfort over security, designing for collaboration rather than defensive positioning. Wide corridors provided excellent sight lines, but offered little concealment for defenders. Large windows created inviting common areas, but established vulnerability points that any competent infiltrator could exploit. Every design choice reflected humanity's fundamental weakness. They built assuming safety, planned for cooperation, expected the universe to accommodate their limitations. The Vel'tar constructed their facilities like fortress laboratories, every angle calculated for maximum defensive advantage, every surface designed to provide tactical benefits. Human architecture looked like it had been designed by creatures who had never faced a real threat. The first door opened to reveal Dr. Martinez, a middle-aged physicist whose research into quantum entanglement had drawn the hegemony's specific attention. His published papers suggested breakthrough understanding in consciousness field theory, proposing that awareness operated through quantum mechanical principles that connected individual minds across space and time. Such discoveries could revolutionize communication technology and render existing intelligence networks obsolete. He lay on his sleeping platform, completely motionless except for the gentle rise and fall of his chest. His face remained utterly peaceful despite the predator standing mere inches away, his consciousness completely absent from his physical form. Alexara approached with her neural toxin injector prepared, noting how the human's hands were positioned with the casual randomness of complete muscular relaxation. The injection site should have been the carotid artery, where the toxin would reach the brain within seconds and ensure immediate neural shutdown. But as Alexara positioned her injector with surgical precision, something unprecedented occurred. Dr. Martinez spoke. "The quantum field equations won't balance unless we account for consciousness as a fundamental force," he said with perfect clarity, his eyes remaining closed. "The observer effect isn't observation. It's participation in reality's construction." Alexara froze, her professional composure cracking like overstressed metal. Her thermal sensors confirmed that Martinez remained in deep sleep, his brain waves showing the characteristic patterns of unconscious neural activity. Yet he had spoken with perfect clarity, addressing concepts that should have been far beyond his primitive understanding. The words themselves were troubling enough. Martinez was discussing consciousness as a fundamental force of physics, suggesting that awareness itself shaped reality through quantum mechanical interactions. Such theories bordered on the metaphysical concepts that the Vel'tar had classified as dangerous pseudoscience millennia ago. She watched in growing confusion as Martinez continued sleeping, his breathing unchanged, his body showing no signs of awakening. His thermal signature remained consistent with deep unconsciousness. Neural monitoring equipment would have registered normal sleep patterns. Yet somehow, impossibly, he had delivered a coherent statement about advanced quantum physics while completely unconscious. Had he somehow detected her presence? Were humans capable of maintaining some form of awareness during their unconscious state? The possibility seemed absurd, violating everything the Vel'tar understood about neural function and consciousness mechanics. The Vel'tar had studied human physiology extensively before beginning operations on their worlds. Sleep represented complete neural shutdown, a biological malfunction that rendered the organism helpless for extended periods. There could be no awareness, no processing, no conscious activity of any kind during these vulnerable hours. Yet Martinez had spoken about quantum consciousness with the precision of someone actively engaged in research. His words hadn't been the random neural firing that sometimes occurred during primitive sleep cycles. They had been coherent, insightful, and directly relevant to his professional work, with implications that reached far beyond human understanding. Alexara backed away from the sleeping platform, her mission parameters suddenly uncertain. The briefing materials had contained no warnings about humans maintaining cognitive function during sleep states. Her injector remained unused as she moved to the next chamber, determined to confirm that Martinez's behavior represented an isolated anomaly rather than a systematic failure in Vel'tar intelligence gathering. Dr. Chen lay in her sleeping chamber, positioned on her side with one arm draped across a pillow. Her breathing followed the same slow, regular pattern that marked deep unconsciousness in every species the Vel'tar had studied. But as Alexara approached with professional caution, Chen began speaking with the same impossible clarity. Pattern recognition suggests humanity's survival advantage isn't intelligence, she said, her eyes moving rapidly beneath closed lids. It's adaptability through scenario modeling. We process millions of potential futures simultaneously during sleep cycles. The words struck Alexara like a physical blow that reverberated through her enhanced nervous system. Chen was describing something that the Vel'tar had always considered their exclusive domain: advanced tactical analysis through parallel processing capabilities. Yet this primitive human was discussing it as if she had direct experience with computational methods that should have been far beyond her species' cognitive reach. Vel'tar consciousness operated through sequential processing, analyzing variables one at a time with perfect logical precision. Their neural architecture prioritized accuracy over speed, ensuring that every conclusion was mathematically sound. But Chen was describing parallel processing on a scale that challenged the fundamental assumptions about biological intelligence. The implications were staggering. If humans were somehow running millions of scenario models during sleep, they weren't just resting. They were conducting massive parallel computing operations using biological neural networks. The processing power required for such operations would exceed most artificial intelligence systems. Yet Chen was claiming this happened naturally every night. Alexara's training demanded immediate action. Two targets displaying unexpected behavior required swift elimination before whatever unknown factor was affecting them could spread to the other humans. But her scientific curiosity, the trait that had made her invaluable for reconnaissance missions, demanded investigation into this anomalous phenomenon. She activated her recording equipment and moved to the next chamber with heightened alertness. Dr. Patterson lay sprawled across his sleeping platform, his limbs positioned with the casual randomness of complete relaxation. His thermal signature confirmed deep sleep, his brain waves showing the characteristic patterns of unconsciousness that every intelligence manual described as total vulnerability. But like the others, he began speaking as she entered his chamber, his voice carrying the tone of someone engaged in active research rather than unconscious rambling. "Every night we run the calculations," Patterson said, his unconscious mind apparently addressing some invisible colleague. 7 billion humans, each processing different variables during sleep states. The collective computational power exceeds anything we've built with silicon and metal. Alexara's hands trembled as she recorded his words, her enhanced nervous system struggling to process implications that challenged every foundation of her worldview. Patterson was describing distributed processing on a scale that the hegemony's greatest supercomputers could barely achieve. Yet he was claiming that sleeping humans accomplished this feat naturally, without technological enhancement or conscious coordination. 7 billion individual processors working in parallel during every sleep cycle. The mathematical implications were staggering beyond calculation. If humans were somehow maintaining cognitive function during sleep, their apparent vulnerability was nothing more than an illusion. Worse, if they were actually enhancing their mental capabilities during these periods, then humanity's primitive rest cycle represented a biological advantage that the Vel'tar had completely failed to recognize. She moved through the remaining chambers, documenting the same impossible phenomenon in each one. Dr. Williams discussed breakthrough solutions to engineering problems that had puzzled him for months, his sleeping mind apparently working through calculations that his conscious awareness couldn't complete. Dr. Rodriguez outlined diplomatic strategies for interspecies contact that demonstrated sophisticated understanding of alien psychology, suggesting preparation for encounters that hadn't yet occurred. Dr. Thompson described mathematical proofs that wouldn't be formally completed for decades, his unconscious intellect apparently racing ahead of his waking mind to explore theoretical territories that conscious thought couldn't navigate. Each human spoke with perfect clarity while remaining completely unconscious, their bodies showing no signs of awareness, no response to her presence, no indication that their conscious minds were active. Yet their words revealed cognitive processes operating at levels that challenged everything the Vel'tar understood about intelligence and consciousness. These humans weren't just thinking during sleep. They were thinking better than when awake, processing information with capabilities that exceeded their conscious limitations. Alexara retreated to the main laboratory, her mission objectives forgotten in the face of this discovery. She needed to understand what she was witnessing before proceeding with any elimination protocols. The quantum consciousness research equipment offered her best chance of analyzing whatever unknown phenomenon was affecting the sleeping humans. The quantum resonance chamber hummed to life under her skilled manipulation, its crystalline matrix powering up with familiar energy signatures. Her species had invented similar devices millions of years ago, making human technology as familiar as her own equipment. But as she began scanning the residential section, the results defied every principle of consciousness that the Vel'tar had established. The display screens filled with data that violated fundamental assumptions about neural function. The sleeping humans weren't just thinking. They were thinking in ways that transcended normal cognitive limitations. Each brain showed neural activity patterns that suggested multiple parallel processing streams, as if each individual was simultaneously exploring dozens of different thought pathways. Their minds were running complex simulations, testing hypothetical scenarios, and generating solutions to problems that their conscious awareness had never directly encountered. The quantum resonance readings showed computational activity that rivaled the most advanced artificial intelligence systems. Yet this was occurring in organic neural tissue during supposed unconsciousness. Even more shocking, the individual brains weren't operating in isolation. Quantum entanglement patterns suggested some form of connection between the sleeping humans, as if their unconscious minds were sharing information and coordinating their processing efforts across the entire facility. Humanity wasn't just sleeping. They were networking their cognitive resources in ways that created a collective intelligence vastly superior to the sum of its individual components. The data streams revealed coordination patterns that defied biological explanation. Individual neural networks were synchronizing their processing cycles, sharing computational loads, and distributing complex calculations across multiple brains. It was as if the sleeping humans had spontaneously formed a biological supercomputer that operated on principles the Vel'tar had never encountered. The implications cascaded through Alexara's consciousness like a collapsing star system. Human sleep wasn't a vulnerability, it was an enhancement period. Their rest cycles weren't biological failures, they were cognitive upgrades that transformed individual humans into components of a distributed supercomputer. Alexara stared at the readouts, her worldview crumbling with each new data point. The Vel'tar had evolved past sleep because they viewed unconsciousness as a weakness, a biological flaw that left organisms vulnerable to predation. They had assumed that maintaining constant awareness represented evolutionary superiority, that species requiring rest periods were inherently primitive and defenseless. But humans had evolved something entirely different. Their sleep states weren't periods of vulnerability. They were periods of enhanced cognitive function that operated on principles the Vel'tar had never imagined. While their bodies rested, their minds engaged in processing activities that exceeded the capabilities of the galaxy's most advanced artificial intelligence systems. They weren't shutting down for 8 hours each day. They were upgrading themselves, running maintenance cycles that improved their cognitive performance and connected them to a species-wide intelligence network that made individual humans far more capable than they appeared during conscious operation. The revelation explained so much about human behavior that had puzzled xenobiologists for decades. Their seemingly irrational optimism stemmed from unconscious modeling that showed them potential positive outcomes invisible to conscious analysis. Their remarkable adaptability resulted from nightly scenario planning that prepared them for countless contingencies their waking minds couldn't anticipate. Their innovative problem-solving abilities were refined through hours of unconscious practice and experimentation, allowing them to discover solutions that seemed to emerge from nowhere, but actually represented the output of sophisticated parallel processing systems operating beyond conscious awareness. Humanity's greatest strength wasn't their technology or their determination. It was their ability to spend a third of their lives thinking in ways that no other species could match. While the Vel'tar maintained constant but limited awareness, humans alternated between normal consciousness and enhanced cognitive states that made them collectively more intelligent than any individual of any species. The quantum consciousness research wasn't just studying awareness, it was documenting humanity's evolutionary advantage. Every paper, every experiment, every breakthrough was revealing the mechanisms that made humans far more dangerous than any intelligence assessment had predicted. The facility's computers contained terabytes of research data that painted an increasingly disturbing picture of human capabilities. Sleep cycle monitoring revealed that human unconscious processing actually accelerated during periods of stress or complexity, suggesting that their enhancement systems activated more powerfully when facing greater challenges. Alexara's communication equipment chimed with an incoming message from her handlers. The hegemony expected confirmation of mission completion within the next hour. Standard protocol demanded immediate response with detailed status reports. But how could she explain that the primitive humans she had been sent to eliminate were actually operating with cognitive capabilities that made the Vel'tar look like intellectual children? She composed her response carefully, selecting words that would convey the magnitude of her discovery without triggering immediate intervention. The hegemony needed to understand that humanity represented something unprecedented in galactic civilization, a species that had evolved not one form of consciousness, but two complementary states that allowed them to access levels of intelligence previously thought impossible. The sleep advantage transformed everything. Human colonies weren't just settlements, they were processing nodes in a vast intelligence network. Human populations weren't just demographics, They were computational resources that grew more powerful with every additional member. Human civilization wasn't primitive. It was the most sophisticated cognitive system in the galaxy. The quantum resonance data revealed additional disturbing details. Human sleep cycles synchronized across geographic regions, creating wave-like patterns of enhanced processing that moved around their planet like cognitive storms. During peak sleep periods, their collective intelligence reached levels that could theoretically solve problems beyond the capabilities of any known technology. As she transmitted her preliminary findings, the humans began stirring in their chambers. Their 8-hour enhancement period was ending, transitioning them back to normal consciousness. But now Alexara understood that normal for humans meant operating with the accumulated insights of their nightly cognitive adventures. They would wake up more intelligent than they had been when they went to sleep, equipped with solutions and strategies that their conscious minds had never directly developed. Each morning brought enhanced understanding, improved capabilities, and deeper insights generated by their unconscious intelligence networks. Dr. Martinez emerged from his chamber, moving with the refreshed energy of someone who had experienced truly restorative rest. He nodded politely to Alexara, apparently unsurprised to find an alien in his laboratory. His manner suggested that his sleeping mind had already processed her presence, analyzed her potential threat level, and developed appropriate response protocols. "I trust you found our research interesting," he said, activating the quantum resonance chamber with practiced efficiency. "We've been expecting visitors ever since our consciousness studies began showing results that challenged conventional understanding." Alexara realized with mounting amazement that the humans had known she was coming. Their sleeping minds had detected her presence, analyzed her mission parameters, and developed countermeasures, while their conscious awareness remained completely unaware of any threat. They had spent the night processing her infiltration as just another scenario to be solved through their collective, unconscious intelligence. The facility's other researchers began emerging from their chambers, each one displaying the calm competence of individuals who had spent the night unconsciously preparing for this moment. They moved with the coordinated efficiency of a team whose sleeping minds had already established optimal workflows and response strategies. Dr. Chen joined them in the laboratory, carrying a steaming cup of the caffeinated beverage that humans consumed to enhance their waking consciousness. She smiled at Alexara with the warmth of someone greeting an expected guest rather than a deadly infiltrator. "Your species made the same assumption that most advanced civilizations make," Chen said, settling into her workstation with casual confidence. "You equated consciousness with constant awareness, sleep with vulnerability. But evolution rarely provides simple answers to complex problems." The revelation struck Alexara with the force of a planetary collision. Every advanced species in the galaxy had evolved past sleep, viewing it as a primitive inefficiency. The hegemony's intelligence assessments were based on the assumption that conscious awareness represented the pinnacle of cognitive evolution. But humans had discovered something that challenged this fundamental assumption. The other researchers gradually assembled in the laboratory, each one displaying the calm competence of individuals who had spent the night unconsciously preparing for this moment. They activated their equipment, reviewed their data, and began their daily work as if hosting an alien assassin was merely another item on their routine schedule. Patterson gestured toward the quantum resonance chamber's display screens, which now showed detailed analyses of Vel'tar neural patterns alongside human sleep state recordings. "Your people eliminated the need for sleep by maintaining single-threaded consciousness," he explained. "Efficient, but ultimately limiting. Humans kept sleep because it allows parallel processing on a scale that conscious thought can't match." Alexara found herself studying the comparative data, with scientific fascination that overwhelmed her original mission parameters. The displays showed that Vel'tar consciousness operated like a single powerful processor, capable of intense focus, but limited to sequential thinking. Human consciousness alternated between focused processing during waking hours and distributed processing during sleep, creating a hybrid system that combined individual awareness with collective intelligence. The quantum entanglement effects you detected aren't accidental, Dr. Rodriguez added, highlighting specific neural patterns on her workstation. Human sleep states naturally create information sharing networks that allow our species to benefit from each other's unconscious insights. We're not just individuals who happen to sleep. We're components of a larger intelligence system that activates during our rest periods. The implications were staggering, beyond calculation. Humanity wasn't just a collection of individual organisms. They were a distributed supercomputer that used sleep cycles to coordinate processing resources across their entire population. Every human settlement, every colony world, every space station represented a node in a vast network that tackled complex problems through collective unconscious effort. Dr. Williams pulled up historical data showing how human innovation had accelerated as their population grew. More humans means more processing power, he said. Our technological advancement isn't linear. It's exponential, because each new person adds computational resources to our species-wide intelligence network. The data showed correlation patterns that defied conventional understanding of technological development. Human advancement accelerated not just with accumulated knowledge, but with population density. Cities generated innovation at rates that exceeded the sum of their individual contributions. Space colonies achieved breakthrough discoveries faster than their research capabilities should have allowed. Sleep isn't rest, Dr. Thompson explained, pulling up brain scan data that showed the true complexity of human unconscious activity. It's work. Every night, billions of human minds tackle problems that conscious thought can't solve. We wake up with insights that seem to come from nowhere, but they're actually the output of the most sophisticated parallel processing system ever evolved. The brain scans revealed neural architectures that resembled quantum computers more than biological systems. During sleep, human minds restructured themselves into processing configurations that maximized parallel computation while minimizing energy consumption. It was as if each human brain transformed into a specialized component of a vast biological supercomputer. Alexara understood now why the hegemony had targeted this particular research facility. The humans weren't just studying consciousness. They were documenting their own evolutionary advantage. Once this information spread through galactic civilization, every species would recognize that humanity possessed cognitive capabilities that made them the dominant intelligence in the galaxy. The research team worked around her with the comfortable efficiency of people who had anticipated this scenario and developed optimal responses through their nightly planning sessions. They shared data with the casual coordination of individuals whose unconscious minds had already established perfect workflow protocols. Their conscious cooperation was merely the implementation of strategies their sleeping selves had designed. The question now, Dr. Martinez said, turning to address Alexara directly, is whether your species can adapt to coexistence with a civilization that thinks differently than anyone expected. The words carried implications that extended far beyond immediate diplomatic concerns. If humans possessed cognitive advantages that other species couldn't match, then the galaxy's power balance had already shifted in ways that no one had recognized. Traditional assumptions about technological superiority, military capability, and civilizational advancement would need complete reevaluation. Alexara realized that her mission had become irrelevant. Eliminating these researchers wouldn't stop humanity's cognitive evolution. It would only delay the galaxy's recognition of what humans had already become. The sleep advantage wasn't a secret that could be suppressed through assassination. It was a biological reality that would reshape interspecies relations regardless of any intervention. She deactivated her weapons and settled into an observer's chair, prepared to document humanity's capabilities for her handlers. The hegemony would need to reconsider their entire approach to human contact. This wasn't a primitive species requiring guidance or elimination. It was an intelligence system that operated on principles the galaxy had never encountered. As the day progressed, Alexara watched the research team make breakthrough discoveries that would have taken Vel'tar scientists months to achieve. Their conscious minds, built upon insights their sleeping selves had developed overnight, creating a seamless cycle of enhancement that accelerated their understanding with each rest period. The humans shared their findings with characteristic generosity, explaining how sleep state consciousness could potentially be replicated in other species through genetic modification or technological enhancement. They weren't trying to maintain their advantage. They were offering to share it with any civilization willing to abandon the assumption that constant awareness represented evolutionary superiority. Their research suggested that sleep-based enhancement could be adapted for other neural architectures, potentially allowing any species to access parallel processing capabilities. The humans seemed genuinely excited about the possibility of creating a galaxy-wide intelligence network that connected all sentient species through shared unconscious processing. By evening, as the humans prepared for another night of unconscious innovation, Alexara had witnessed enough to understand that the galaxy's power balance had already shifted. Humanity's sleep advantage gave them cognitive capabilities that would eventually solve every challenge facing interstellar civilization. They would develop technologies, strategies, and solutions that other species couldn't match simply because they spent a third of their lives thinking in ways that no one else could replicate. The research team retired to their chambers with the same casual routine she had observed the previous night. But now Alexara understood that they weren't going to sleep. They were going to work. Their unconscious minds would spend the next 8 hours processing the day's discoveries, exploring new possibilities, and developing innovations that their conscious awareness would implement tomorrow. She transmitted her final report to the hegemony, recommending immediate diplomatic contact and alliance negotiations. Humanity represented the galaxy's greatest intelligence resource, and any civilization that failed to recognize their capabilities would find themselves outpaced by species that adapted to the new paradigm. As the station settled into nighttime quiet, Alexara remained awake, monitoring the quantum consciousness readings that showed humanity's collective intelligence network activating once again. 8 billion human minds were beginning their nightly enhancement session, working together in ways that transcended individual awareness to solve problems that would shape the future of galactic civilization. The sleep advantage had transformed humanity from a primitive species into the galaxy's dominant intelligence. And tomorrow morning, they would wake up even smarter than they were today.